Pack your things and get out. Now. The words echoed through Terminal C of Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport like a gunshot. Lily Chen stood frozen at Gate 42, her customer service uniform suddenly feeling too tight, too visible, too humiliating under the fluorescent lights and the stares of hundreds of passengers waiting for their flights. Richard Thornton, the airport operations manager, stood before her with his arms crossed, his face twisted in barely concealed contempt. At 52, he was everything corporate America loved to promote: white, male, confident, and utterly convinced of his own infallibility. His expensive suit probably cost more than Lily made in 3 months. At least that's what he wanted everyone to believe. "Mr. Thornton, I don't understand," Lily said quietly, aware of the phones already being raised, recording every second of her public humiliation. "What did I do wrong? What did you do wrong?" Richard's voice rose deliberately, playing to the growing crowd. "Let me tell you what you did wrong. You've been late 3 times this month. Your attitude has been reported by multiple colleagues. And frankly, your kind doesn't represent the professional image this airport wants to project. Your kind." The words hung in the air like poison gas. A few passengers gasped. Others looked away uncomfortably. But most just watched, their phones capturing every excruciating moment for social media. "My name is Lily Chen, and I'm 29 years old. 3 months ago, I started working as a customer service representative at this airport, one of the busiest in the world. What Richard Thornton doesn't know, what nobody here knows, is that I didn't need this job for the $15.50 an hour. I needed it for something far more valuable: information." Lily had graduated from Harvard Business School 6 years ago, top of her class. Her late father, Thomas Chen, had been a quiet genius who'd invested in airport infrastructure back in the 1990s when everyone thought he was crazy. When he died suddenly last year, Lily inherited his entire portfolio, including something very specific: 60% ownership of the private equity firm that had acquired controlling interest in this very airport just 8 months ago. But Lily had learned early that being a young Black Asian woman with money didn't mean people would respect you. It meant they'd find new ways to dismiss you, to question your credentials, to suggest your success was somehow illegitimate. So she'd done something radical. She'd gone undercover in her own airport to see exactly how it was being run, who was running it, and who needed to be removed. And Richard Thornton had just made himself candidate number 1. "I've never been late," Lily said calmly, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "I have documentation of every shift I've worked. And I'd love to know which colleagues reported my attitude, because I've received nothing but positive feedback from passengers. Are you calling me a liar?" Richard stepped closer, invading her personal space in a way designed to intimidate. "In front of all these people? I'm asking for specifics, which is my right as an employee." "You have no rights here anymore. You're fired." Richard pulled out his phone and made a show of calling security. "I want her escorted out immediately. And to make sure she's banned from airport property. People like her, they always try to come back and cause trouble. People like her." There it was again. The barely coded language that had plagued Lily her entire life. Too Black for some spaces, too Asian for others, never quite fitting into anyone's narrow definition of acceptable. 2 security guards approached, young men who looked uncomfortable with their assignment, but too career-focused to question their superior. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to come with us," one of them said quietly, almost apologetically. Lily nodded slowly, maintaining her dignity as she gathered her few personal items from behind the service desk. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't crack, because she'd learned something important over the years. The best revenge is served with a smile and a plan. As the guards walked her through the terminal, past the gates and shops and restaurants, past the travelers who stared and whispered, Lily caught sight of her reflection in one of the massive windows overlooking the tarmac. She looked small in her uniform, powerless, defeated. But appearances, as Richard Thornton was about to learn, could be devastatingly deceiving. "I'm sorry about this," one of the guards muttered as they reached the employee exit. "Thornton's had it out for several people lately. You're just the latest. How many others has he fired?" Lily asked, her mind already calculating. 4 in the past 2 months. All women. 3 of them were Black or Latino. The guard glanced around nervously. Look, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but someone needs to do something about that guy. Lily smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the guard take a small step back. Don't worry. Someone will. She walked out of the airport into the humid Atlanta afternoon, pulled out her personal phone, the one no one at the airport had ever seen, and made a single call. Marcus, it's time. I need you to schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Yes, all of them. And make sure Richard Thornton is invited. Tell him the new majority shareholder wants to meet the management team. She paused, her smile widening. No, don't tell him my name yet. Let it be a surprise. If this story has you hooked and you want to see how Lily takes back everything that's rightfully hers, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens when Richard walks into that boardroom tomorrow. Because what Richard Thornton had just done wasn't just wrong. It was the biggest mistake of his career, and Lily had spent 3 months documenting every single violation, every discriminatory comment, every fraudulent expense report, every corner he'd cut to pad his own pockets. He thought he was firing an inconvenient employee. What he'd actually done was declare war on the woman who could take everything from him with a single signature, and the most delicious part? He still had no idea who she really was. That evening, Lily sat in her penthouse apartment overlooking Buckhead, Atlanta's most affluent neighborhood, reviewing 3 months of meticulously documented evidence on her laptop. The contrast between this space and the cramped employee locker room she'd been using at the airport was almost comical. Her phone buzzed constantly. Text messages from former coworkers, some genuinely concerned, others clearly fishing for gossip. She ignored most of them, but one caught her attention. It was from Jennifer Martinez, one of the gate agents who'd always been kind to her. Lily, I'm so sorry about what happened. Richard is celebrating in the manager's lounge right now. He's telling everyone you threatened him and that he had no choice but to fire you for safety reasons. He's completely rewriting what happened. Please be careful. He's done this before and somehow always gets away with it. Lily's jaw tightened. Of course he was rewriting the narrative. Men like Richard always did. The question was, who would believe his version versus the dozen passenger videos already circulating on social media? She opened Twitter and searched for the airport's name. The videos were everywhere. #airport racism was trending. Thousands of comments expressed outrage, demanded accountability, called for boycotts. But Lily knew how this would play out. The airport would release a carefully worded statement. Richard would be put on temporary leave, maybe attend some performative diversity training, and then quietly reinstated once the news cycle moved on. Unless someone with real power decided differently. Her laptop chimed with an incoming video call. Marcus Webb, her father's former attorney and now her most trusted advisor, appeared on screen. At 61, Marcus had seen every corporate battle imaginable and lost very few of them. I've scheduled the board meeting for 9 a.m. tomorrow, Marcus said without preamble. All 7 board members confirmed. Richard Thornton has been told that the majority shareholder wants a full operational review and that his presence is mandatory. How did he react? Arrogant as expected. He apparently told his assistant that he's finally going to get FaceTime with the money people and that this is his chance to pitch his expansion plans. Marcus's expression was grim. Lily, I've been going through the financial records you've been sending me. It's worse than we thought. How much worse? Richard has been running a systematic scheme for the past 18 months. Inflated vendor contracts with kickbacks, fraudulent overtime claims, discrimination-based firings to avoid paying severance and benefits. I estimate he's personally profited around $800,000 and cost the airport another $2. $3 million in operational losses and legal settlements that were buried in the budget. Lily felt her anger crystallize into cold determination. And the other managers? Are they complicit or just incompetent? Bit of both. Your CFO, Patricia Okonkwo, has been flagging irregularities for months, but Richard's been blocking her access to certain accounts. She's clean. Probably our ally if we play this right. The HR director, David Chen, ironically no relation to you,
has been documenting Richard's behavior but was told by the previous ownership group to manage it internally.
Translation: cover it up. What about the board? Do any of them know what's really happening? Marcus shook his head. They know the numbers aren't great, but Richard has been feeding them a story about industry-wide challenges post-pandemic, increased security costs, union negotiations. Standard excuses. What they don't know is that comparable airports are thriving while we're bleeding money. Because Richard is literally stealing it and creating a toxic work environment that's driving away talent and inviting lawsuits. Marcus leaned forward. Lily, are you sure you want to do this tomorrow? We could build the case more slowly. Let the lawyers handle everything. Keep you out of the spotlight. Lily thought about the look on Richard's face that afternoon. The casual cruelty. The absolute certainty that he could destroy someone's livelihood without consequences. She thought about Jennifer's message about how he'd done this before and always gotten away with it. No more waiting. Tomorrow we end this. Meanwhile, across town in an upscale sports bar, Richard Thornton was holding court with his inner circle, 3 other managers who'd benefited from his regime and were fiercely loyal as a result. I'm telling you, that Chun girl was a lawsuit waiting to happen, Richard said, his third scotch loosening his tongue. She had that attitude from day one. Always asking questions, always watching everything, taking notes. I knew she was going to be a problem. You think she actually sue? Asked Tom, the deputy operations manager. Let her try. We've got lawyers who eat people like her for breakfast. Richard signaled for another drink. Besides, I documented everything. Lateness, attitude problems, customer complaints. By the time our legal team is done, she'd be lucky if she can get a job at McDonald's. What Richard didn't know was that every customer complaint in her file was fabricated, every lateness notation was backdated and false, and that Lily had copies of the original, unaltered records that proved it. I heard she's getting some traction on social media, Tom said carefully. The videos are going pretty viral. Richard waved dismissively. Social media outrage lasts about 48 hours.
Next week there'll be some new scandal and everyone will forget about this.
Trust me, I've weathered worse storms. Still, that board meeting tomorrow, you think it's related? Are you kidding? This is about expansion funding. The investors want to hear how we're going to increase revenue. I've got a whole presentation ready about premium lounges and retail partnerships. Richard grinned. This might actually work out perfectly. While HR is dealing with Chun's inevitable complaint, I'll be securing the funding that's going to make us all very rich. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Meeting location confirmed. Executive boardroom, 9th floor. Investors arriving at 8:45 a.m. Business formal attire required. Richard smiled. Finally, he was going to meet the people who really mattered. The ones who understood that running an airport required tough decisions and tougher leadership. They'd appreciate his results-focused management style, even if some bleeding heart employees didn't. What Richard couldn't see, what his arrogance wouldn't let him see, was that he wasn't walking into an opportunity. He was walking into an execution. Back in her apartment, Lily was selecting her outfit for tomorrow. Not the uniform of a service worker this time. She pulled out a custom-tailored charcoal suit from her closet, Armani. Perfectly fitted. Her Harvard Business School ring. The Patek Philippe watch her father had given her when she graduated. Tomorrow, Richard Thornton would see her not as the woman he could casually destroy, but as the force that would dismantle everything he'd built on lies and discrimination. Her phone rang. Patricia Okonkwo, the CFO Marcus had mentioned. Ms. Chun? My name is Patricia Okonkwo.
I hope you don't mind, Marcus Webb gave me your number.
I heard about what happened today at the airport. Word travels fast. In a toxic environment, people talk. Miss Chen, I don't know if you're planning any legal action, but if you are, I want you to know that you're not alone.
Richard Thornton has been running this airport like his personal kingdom.
And some of us have been documenting everything, waiting for someone with the courage to challenge him. Lily smiled. Ms. Okonkwo, how would you feel about attending tomorrow's board meeting?
I think your expertise might be valuable. There was a pause.
I wasn't invited to the board meeting. You are now.
9 a.m. sharp. And, Patricia?
Bring every document you've been hiding. After hanging up, Lily walked to her floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there,
Richard was sleeping soundly, confident in his power, certain of his invincibility.
He had no idea that the woman he'd humiliated in front of hundreds of people held the keys to his kingdom. No idea that every discriminatory word, every fraudulent expense, every abuse of power had been carefully documented by the very person he'd underestimated most. Tomorrow morning, Richard Thornton would walk into that boardroom expecting recognition and reward. Instead, he would face reckoning and ruin, delivered by the one person he never saw coming. At 7:30 a.m., Lily arrived at the airport's administrative building through the executive entrance,
a door she'd never been allowed to use during her 3 months as an employee.
The security guard at the desk looked up, momentarily confused by the elegant woman in the designer suit who bore only a slight resemblance to the uniformed worker who'd been escorted out yesterday.
"I'm here for the 9 a.m. board meeting," Lily said smoothly,
handing him a credential that identified her as representing Chun Investment Holdings. The guard checked his list and nodded, still looking slightly puzzled. "9th floor, ma'am." Conference room A. As the elevator climbed, Lily reviewed her mental checklist one final time. Marcus would arrive at 8:45 with the legal team. Patricia would bring the financial documents at 8:50. The board members, all of whom knew her only as the new majority shareholder without having met her in person, would be seated by 8:55. And Richard Thornton, punctual and eager to impress the investors he thought controlled his future, would arrive at exactly 8:58. She'd studied him long enough to know his patterns.
The executive floor was everything the employee areas weren't. Marble floors, contemporary art, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the runways.
This was where the real decisions were made, far from the workers who actually kept the airport running. Marcus was already in the boardroom, setting up presentation equipment. He looked up when Lily entered and allowed himself a slight smile. "Ready for this?" "I've been ready since the day he called my father's investment strategy lucky gambling by immigrants who didn't know any better." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "He said that?" "In the break room. Week 2 of my employment. He didn't know I was Thomas Chun's daughter, obviously." Lily set her briefcase on the table. "He thought I was just another desperate worker who'd be grateful for minimum wage and too scared to complain about anything. The irony is spectacular. The irony is justice." Lily pulled out a folder containing printouts of every video from yesterday's incident. "How many board members have seen these?" "All of them. I sent the links last night with a note that this incident required immediate discussion. 3 of them called me directly, furious. 2 want Richard fired immediately. 1, Gerald Thompson, suggested we wait for all the facts." "Let me guess. Gerald and Richard play golf together?" "Tennis, actually." "But yes, they're friends." "Gerald's going to be our resistance." Lily wasn't worried. Gerald Thompson owned 8% of the airport through his investment fund. She owned 60%. Math had a way of settling arguments. At 8:50, Patricia Okonkwo arrived, carrying 2 boxes of documents. She was a striking woman in her mid-40s, with natural hair and an air of barely suppressed anger that Lily recognized immediately. This was someone who'd been fighting the good fight for too long without backup. "Miss Chen, I brought everything. Expense reports, email threads, HR complaints that were mysteriously lost, settlement agreements with NDAs attached." Patricia set the boxes down with a heavy thud. 18 months of evidence that Richard Thornton has been running a criminal enterprise disguised as airport management. "Patricia, call me Lily. And thank you for your courage. I know what it costs to stand up in a place like this. Do you?" Patricia's voice was sharp, then softened when she saw Lily's expression. "I'm sorry. I've watched good people get chewed up by this system for years. Yesterday when I saw what he did to you, I realized I was part of the problem by staying silent. You weren't silent. You documented everything. That's not cowardice, that's strategy." Lily gestured to a seat. "In about 30 minutes, Richard is going to walk through that door expecting applause. Instead, he's going to get accountability. And you're going to be the one who delivers a significant portion of it. Patricia's eyes widened. Me?
I'm just the CFO. I don't have that kind of authority. You have something better than authority. You have facts.
And in a boardroom, facts are nuclear weapons. By 8:55, all 7 board members had arrived. They were a diverse group, at least superficially. 3 white men, 2 white women, 1 black man, and 1 Asian woman. Old money and new traditional investors and tech entrepreneurs. What they had in common was a significant financial stake in the airports, success, and a growing concern that something was seriously wrong with current management. Lily stood at the head of the table but didn't sit. Let them wonder. Let them speculate about this young woman who'd somehow accumulated majority control of their investment. Good morning. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I'm Lily Chen, and as of my father's passing last year, I control Chen Investment Holdings, which, as you know, holds 60% equity stake in this airport. Gerald Thompson leaned back in his chair, his expression skeptical. Miss Chen, with all due respect to your late father's business acumen, some of us are concerned about such a significant asset being controlled by someone so, well, young and inexperienced. I graduated from Harvard Business School at the top of my class, Mr. Thompson. I've spent the past 6 years working in private equity and operational consulting. But you're right that I lacked one crucial form of experience. Lily smiled coolly. I'd never actually worked a minimum wage job in a discriminatory environment. So, for the past 3 months, I corrected that oversight. The room went silent. One of the board members, Sandra Wu, leaned forward. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying that I've been working as a customer service representative at Gate 42 in Terminal C since November. I wanted to see firsthand how this airport operates, how employees are treated, how management functions when they think no one important is watching. That's absurd, Gerald sputtered. You went undercover in your own airport? I did, and what I discovered is that we have a systemic problem that starts at the top of operations and filters down through every department. A problem that's costing us millions in fraud, lawsuits, and lost productivity. A problem that became crystal clear yesterday when I was publicly fired and humiliated by Richard Thornton. She pulled up the first video on the screen, her own face in uniform, standing at the gate while Richard's voice rang out. Your kind doesn't represent the professional image this airport wants to project. The board members watched in horrified silence. When the video ended, Lily played another, then another. 7 different angles, all capturing the same naked discrimination, the same casual cruelty. Jesus Christ, muttered James Park, one of the tech investors. Is he insane? No, he's confident. Confident that he's untouchable. Confident that even if someone complains, the system will protect him because it always has before. Lily turned to Patricia. Ms. Okonkwo, would you like to tell the board what else Richard has been confident about? Patricia stood, her hands only slightly trembling as she opened her first box. Over the past 18 months, Richard Thornton has approved $2.3 million in fraudulent expenses. He's taken kickbacks from vendors, inflated invoices, and created fake overtime claims. Additionally, he systematically fired employees, primarily women and minorities, in ways designed to avoid severance payments and benefits. She began laying out documents, each one more damning than the last. Bank statements showing suspicious deposits. Email chains where Richard explicitly discussed managing out employees based on race and gender. Settlement agreements where the airport had paid out hundreds of thousands to avoid discrimination lawsuits, all of which Richard had characterized to the board as nuisance claims. Gerald Thompson's face had gone from skeptical to pale. I had no idea the settlements were related to discrimination. Richard told me they were slip and fall accidents, workers' comp issues. He lied to you, Mr. Thompson, just like he lied to me when he fabricated my performance issues to justify my termination. Lily placed a file in front of each board member. These are my actual performance reviews. Perfect scores, commendations from passengers. 0 legitimate complaints. And these are the documents Richard created yesterday after he fired me. Suddenly, I have a history of lateness, attitude problems, and customer complaints. All dated within the past 24 hours but backdated to look historical. Sandra Wu was flipping through the documents, her expression darkening. This is fraud.
This is explicit, documented fraud and discrimination.
It is, Lily agreed.
And it's what he's been doing for years to dozens of employees,
knowing that most of them don't have the resources to fight back effectively.
At precisely 8:58, the boardroom door opened.
Richard Thornton walked in, his smile confident, his suit immaculate. He was carrying a leather portfolio,
clearly containing the expansion presentation he'd been planning to dazzle the investors with. He saw the board members first, nodding respectfully. Then his eyes swept the room and landed on Lily, standing at the head of the table in her designer suit. For exactly 3 seconds, his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. The confused recognition flickered across his face. She looked familiar, but the context was all wrong. This woman in Armani couldn't possibly be the employee he destroyed yesterday.
Then his eyes met hers, and Lily saw the exact moment reality crashed into his arrogance. His face went white. The portfolio slipped from his hands, papers scattering across the marble floor. His mouth opened but no sound came out.
"Hello, Richard," Lily said pleasantly.
"Thank you for joining us. We have so much to discuss about your performance. Why don't you have a seat?" But Richard wasn't moving.
He was standing frozen in the doorway, his entire world crumbling around him as he finally
understood what he'd done. He hadn't fired an inconvenient employee. He'd declared war on the woman who owned the battlefield. Richard's legs finally remembered how to move, but it was the wrong direction. He took a step backward, toward the door, toward escape. "Sit down, Mr. Thornton." Marcus's voice was steel.
"Or we can have security escort you."
"Your choice." The word security seemed to penetrate Richard's shock. He'd used that word yesterday, weaponized it against Lily. Now it was being turned back on him. He stumbled to the nearest chair, his usual confidence evaporating like water on hot asphalt.
There must be some misunderstanding," Richard managed, his voice cracking. "Miss Chan, if this is about yesterday, I was simply following protocol for employee terminations. There was no discrimination. I have documentation." "You have fabricated documentation,"
Lily interrupted, her voice calm and surgical.
"Created approximately 6 hours after you fired me. We have the metadata, Richard.
Every file you altered, every backdated entry, every falsified complaint. Digital forensics is remarkably precise." She nodded to Marcus, who pulled up a split-screen comparison on the monitor. On the left, Richard's fabricated personnel file for Lily, full of negative reports. On the right, the original files showing perfect performance. "Notice the creation dates," Marcus pointed out. "Every negative document was created between 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. yesterday. After you fired her. You didn't even wait a full day before trying to cover your tracks." Gerald Thompson was staring at the screen, his face ashen. "Richard, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't falsify company records." Richard's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. What could he say? The evidence was irrefutable. "But it gets so much better," Lily continued, and there was something dangerous in her smile now. "Patricia, would you share what you found in Richard's expense accounts?" Patricia stood again, and this time there was no trembling. She'd been waiting for this moment for 18 months. Richard Thornton has been running a kickback scheme with 3 major vendors.
Inflated contracts, ghost employees, fraudulent invoices.
Here's a sample. A $47,000 payment to Advanced Security Consulting for services that were never rendered. The company is registered to Richard's brother-in-law. She laid down a bank statement. And here's a $15,000 deposit into Richard's personal account, dated 3 days after that payment was processed. Richard lurched forward.
"That's private financial information. You can't what? Investigate fraud?
Examine financial records of a company I control?" Lily's voice was sharp now. "You seem confused about who has power in this room, Richard. Let me clarify. I own 60% of this airport. You work for me. Or rather, you did work for me. Past tense. You can't fire me. I have a contract.
You have a termination clause that activates immediately upon discovery of fraud,
discrimination, or violation of company ethics policies. You've managed to violate all three. Marcus slid a document across the table.
Your employment is terminated effective immediately. For cause.
Which means no severance, no benefits, and no glowing reference letter. The color drained from Richard's face. This is insane.
You're destroying my career over one mistake. One mistake?
Sandra Wu's voice cracked like a whip. Patricia just showed us 18 months of systematic fraud.
And this, she held up her phone showing yesterday's viral video. This isn't a mistake.
This is who you are. The EEOC is already investigating, Lily added. As is the FBI's Financial Crimes Division.
Marcus sent them everything this morning. The kickbacks alone are worth 5 to 7 years in federal prison.
Prison? Richard's voice was barely a whisper.
You can't. I have a family. I have a reputation. You had a reputation, Lily corrected.
As of 2 hours ago, every major news outlet in Atlanta received a press package detailing your termination and the reasons for it.
By noon, the national outlets will have it.
By evening, you'll be the lead story on every business news program in the country. Richard's hands were shaking now, his breathing shallow. Please, there has to be a way to resolve this quietly. I'll resign. I'll pay back the money. You'll face the consequences of your actions, Lily said firmly.
Something you've never had to do before because you've always been protected by systems designed to shield men like you.
But those systems don't work when the person you victimize owns the system. She walked around the table until she was standing directly in front of him.
Yesterday, you humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. You called security to escort me out like a criminal. You used phrases like "you're kind" and "people like her." Because you thought I was powerless.
You thought being a young Black Asian woman meant I couldn't fight back. Richard couldn't meet her eyes. Here's what you didn't know.
My father spent 30 years building an empire specifically, so his daughter would never have to accept that kind of treatment.
He bought into this airport because he believed in its potential.
And I honored his legacy by working alongside the employees, seeing what really happens here, documenting everything.
She placed a folder in front of him. This contains the names of 17 people you fired or forced out over the past 3 years.
16 of them were women or minorities. We're reaching out to every single one of them.
Offering settlements, references, and if they want it, their jobs back. That will cost millions, Gerald said weakly. Yes, it will.
And it's worth every penny to correct the damage Richard has done. Lily turned back to Richard.
You asked if I was calling you a liar yesterday. The answer is yes.
You're a liar, a fraud, and a bigot.
And now everyone knows it. Richard's face crumpled.
Tears actually started rolling down his cheeks. Not from remorse, but from the sudden realization that everything he'd built,
every connection he'd made, every bit of status he'd accumulated, was gone. Destroyed in less than 30 minutes by the woman he'd dismissed as insignificant. Security will escort you to your office to collect personal items only, Marcus said. You have 15 minutes. Any company property, including your laptop and phone, stays here. Any attempt to delete files or remove documents will be considered destruction of evidence. 2 security guards entered, the same 2 who'd escorted Lily out yesterday.
They recognized her now, and their expressions showed a mix of shock and something that might have been satisfaction. They'd never liked Richard either.
One more thing, Lily said as Richard stood on shaking legs. You're banned from airport property. Permanently. If you set foot here again, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Your kind doesn't represent the professional image this airport wants to project.
She threw his own words back at him, and the impact was visible.
Richard flinched as if she'd struck him physically. As the guards let him out, Richard turned back one final time.
I'm sorry,
he whispered.
I'm so sorry.
I know you are, Lily replied. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you picked the wrong target.
But you're not sorry for what you've done. And we both know it.
The door closed behind him with a definitive click. The boardroom was silent for a long moment. Then James Park started clapping, slow and deliberate. Sandra Wu joined in.
Then Patricia. Within seconds, everyone except Gerald was applauding.
That, James said, was the most righteous takedown I've ever witnessed in 30 years of business. If you've been following this story and want to see how Lily transforms this airport from a place of discrimination into something her father would be proud of,
hit that subscribe button because the final chapter of this journey is going to show you what real leadership looks like.
Gerald Thompson cleared his throat. Ms. Chen, I owe you an apology.
I was wrong about your experience and your judgment. Richard fooled a lot of us.
He fooled people who wanted to be fooled, Lily said, not unkindly. People who found it easier to believe his excuses than to investigate the truth. But we're going to change that culture, starting today. She turned to Patricia. Ms. Okonkwo, how would you feel about a promotion to Chief Operating Officer? This airport needs leadership with integrity. Patricia's eyes widened.
Yes, absolutely. Good. Your first priority is implementing new oversight systems so nothing like Richard's scheme can happen again.
Your second is helping me interview every department head. Anyone who enabled this behavior or looked the other way needs to go. Lily looked around at the board members.
This airport is going to become a model for how to run a business ethically and profitably. We're going to prove that treating employees with dignity isn't just morally right, it's good business.
And anyone who doesn't like that vision can sell me their shares. No one moved to leave.
Outside in the hallway, Richard Thornton sat on a bench, his box of personal items beside him, watching his entire life collapse in real time on his phone.
The news alerts were already rolling in. His professional networks were blowing up. Former colleagues were posting carefully distanced statements about how they'd always had concerns. His wife was calling. He couldn't answer. How do you tell your family that you've lost everything because you couldn't control your prejudice and greed? Through the glass walls, he could see Lily addressing the board, confident and commanding. The woman he'd dismissed as insignificant was now reshaping the future while he was being erased from the present. 6 months later, Lily stood in the newly renovated employee lounge of Terminal C, watching the morning shift change with quiet satisfaction. The space looked completely different now. Comfortable seating, natural lighting, complimentary coffee,
and a wall of excellence displaying photos and stories of outstanding employees. Jennifer Martinez approached, now wearing a supervisor badge.
Ms. Chen,
the new training program graduates its first class today. 15 employees moving into management positions, and guess what?
12 of them are women or minorities. That's not a quota. That's what happens when you actually give people opportunities based on merit.
Lily smiled.
How are they feeling? Nervous, excited, grateful. Jennifer paused.
A lot of them asked me to thank you. Some of them were ready to quit before you took over. They didn't think places like this could change. Places don't change.
People change them. Lily gestured to the wall.
Every person up there was here during Richard's regime, suffering in silence or fighting battles alone.
Now they're thriving because we removed the obstacle and created the support structure. The airport's transformation had been comprehensive and swift.
Patricia Okonkwo as COO had implemented transparent financial systems and anonymous reporting channels.
The HR department had been completely restructured with outside oversight. Every manager had gone through rigorous equity training. Not the performative kind, but real education with accountability measures. The results spoke for themselves. Employee retention was up 40%. Customer satisfaction scores had jumped 28%. Operational efficiency had improved so dramatically that the airport was now being studied as a case model by business schools, ironically including Harvard.
And the financial performance?
With Richard's fraud eliminated and the toxic culture addressed, the airport had posted record profits for 2 consecutive quarters. Turns out that treating employees well and running an honest operation was actually good for the bottom line. Who knew? Lily's phone buzzed with a news alert. She glanced at it and felt nothing, not satisfaction, not anger, just a sense of closed chapter finality. Richard Thornton, former airport operations manager, was sentenced today to 6 years in federal prison for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Additionally, he faces $2.8 million in restitution payments and will be prohibited from holding any corporate management position upon release. 6 years. It wasn't enough for all the lives he damaged, all the careers he derailed,
All the dignity he'd stolen from people who were just trying to work and live. But it was something. It was accountability, which was more than men like Richard usually faced. Jennifer saw Lily's expression. Is that about Thornton? Sentencing came through. 6 years federal prison. Good. Jennifer's voice was firm. I know we're supposed to be evolved and forgiving, but honestly? Good. He deserved worse. He got worse. His wife divorced him. His country club membership was revoked. His professional network evaporated overnight. He'll spend the rest of his life as a cautionary tale. Lily put her phone away. That's actually a harsher punishment than prison. He has to live knowing that he destroyed his own life because he couldn't see past his prejudices. Patricia appeared, tablet in hand, looking far more energized than the exhausted woman Lily had met 6 months ago. Quarterly review is ready. You're going to love these numbers. Also, the mayor's office called. They want to present you with a business ethics award at next month's chamber event. Tell them I'll accept on behalf of our employees. They're the ones who maintained integrity in an impossible environment. They want you specifically. The woman who went undercover in her own company to expose corruption? That's legendary. You're on the cover of next month's Forbes, by the way. Lily had seen the preview. The headline read, "The Heiress Who Became the Help, How Lily Chen Revolutionized Corporate Accountability." The article detailed her father's immigrant story, her own education and inheritance, and her decision to work minimum wage to understand the business she owned. Other CEOs were calling it a publicity stunt. Lily didn't care what they called it. She cared that 17 former employees had been contacted, offered settlements, and most importantly, offered genuine apologies. 14 had accepted financial compensation. 3 had returned to work at the airport in new positions. All of them had their records cleared and received reference letters signed by Lily herself. There's something else, Patricia said, her expression shifting to something more personal. David Chen from HR told me that applications for positions here have tripled since the story broke. People want to work at the airport that fired the racist manager. They see it as a place that actually walks the walk on values. Reputation is built on actions, not press releases. Lily checked her watch. I need to get to the ceremony. Are we ready? All set. Gate 42, in 15 minutes. Gate 42. The exact spot where Richard had publicly humiliated her, where he'd used his power to destroy what he thought was a powerless employee. Today, it would become something different. When Lily arrived, a small crowd had gathered, employees, board members, local media, and representatives from several civil rights organizations. A bronze plaque was mounted on the wall, covered by a cloth. Lily approached the microphone, aware that this moment would be recorded, shared, analyzed. Good. Let it be. 6 months ago, I stood at this gate and was fired by a man who believed my race, my gender, and my assumed class made me disposable. He was loud, public, and confident in his cruelty because the system had always protected him before. She paused, letting the words settle. But here's what Richard Thornton didn't understand. Systems are built by people, and they can be changed by people. My father, Thomas Chen, came to this country with nothing. He worked minimum wage jobs while teaching himself business and finance. He invested in airports because he believed in connection, in bringing people together, in creating opportunities. When he died and left me his legacy, I had a choice. I could have managed from a distance, relying on reports and metrics. Instead, I chose to honor his journey by walking the same path, working alongside people who keep this place running, understanding their challenges, seeing what really happens when leadership fails. She pulled the cloth from the plaque. It read, Gate 42 Integrity Memorial in recognition of every employee who has faced discrimination, retaliation, or injustice in the workplace. May this space remind us that true leadership means protecting the vulnerable, holding the powerful accountable, and never accepting cruelty as the cost of doing business. Dedicated by Lily Chen, who proved that the best revenge is not just success, but creating a system where revenge becomes unnecessary because justice is guaranteed. The crowd applauded. Several people were crying, including Jennifer. Lily turned back to the microphone. Richard Thornton thought he was firing an inconvenient employee.
What he actually did was force me to become the leader this airport needed. His cruelty became my catalyst. His discrimination became my determination.
And his downfall became everyone's lesson. To anyone watching this who has ever been told they're not good enough, not right for the position, not what the company is looking for, I want you to hear this clearly. Their limitations are not your reality. Their prejudices are not your ceiling.
And their power is not permanent.
My father used to say that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now.
I couldn't change the past for the 17 people Richard harmed before me, but I could change the present and the future. And so can you. She looked directly into the camera that she knew was broadcasting live.
If you're in a toxic workplace, document everything. Build your case quietly and carefully. Find your allies. And when you're ready, don't just leave. Change the system so the next person doesn't have to suffer what you suffered. If you're a leader watching this,
understand that your employees are not disposable resources.
They're human beings who deserve dignity, fair pay, and environments where merit matters more than bias.
And if you can't provide that, you don't deserve to lead.
And if you're someone like Richard Thornton, someone who believes power gives you permission to harm others, know this: somewhere in your organization is someone you underestimated, someone you dismissed,
someone who is watching, learning, and preparing. And when that person rises, and they will rise, your legacy will be measured not by your success but by your cruelty.
The applause was thunderous now.
Lily stepped away from the microphone and was immediately surrounded by well-wishers.
But her eyes were drawn to one person in the back, an older black woman in a custodial uniform,
tears streaming down her face, holding her phone up to record everything.
Lily made her way through the crowd to her.
"I'm Lily. What's your name?"
"Grace.
Grace Williams."
"I've worked here for 23 years. Grace's voice shook. "I was one of the people Richard tried to force out. He made my life hell for 8 months because I reported safety violations he was ignoring. Today is my first day feeling like this job might actually be worth keeping." Lily hugged her.
And Grace held on tight, 23 years of exhaustion and dignity and perseverance folding into that embrace.
"It's worth keeping now," Lily whispered.
"I promise you that." That evening, Lily returned to her Buckhead apartment, exhausted but satisfied.
Her phone showed hundreds of messages, interview requests, speaking invitations, consulting offers.
Other companies wanted to know how she transformed the airport's culture so quickly.
The answer was simple, though people rarely wanted to hear it. She'd removed the toxic leadership and empowered good people who'd been suppressed. She'd aligned incentives with values.
She'd made it clear that discrimination had consequences and excellence had rewards. Revolutionary concepts, apparently.
Her laptop showed an email from Harvard Business School. They wanted her to guest lecture on ethical leadership and corporate accountability. The irony was beautiful. Richard had been so proud of his MBA from a state school, so dismissive of credentials he assumed people like Lily couldn't have. Now she'd be teaching future business leaders how not to become him.
Lily walked to her window and looked out at Atlanta's glittering skyline. Somewhere in the city, Richard Thornton was beginning his first night in federal prison.
Somewhere else, 17 people were sleeping better, knowing they'd been vindicated. And tomorrow, thousands of airport employees would go to work in an environment that valued them.
Her father had built an empire so his daughter would never have to accept mistreatment.
Lily had transformed that empire into something larger. A proof of concept that businesses could be both profitable and principled, that justice and success weren't opposites but partners. She thought about that moment at Gate 42 when Richard had said, "You're kind," with such casual venom. He'd meant it as a dismissal, an erasure.
Instead,
he'd ignited something that would outlast his entire career. Proof that underestimating someone based on race, gender, or class is not just morally wrong, it's strategically stupid, because you never know who you're really talking to.
That minimum wage worker might own the company. That quiet employee might be documenting everything.
That person you're dismissing might be the architect of your downfall.
Lily Chen had learned that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation.
She hadn't just destroyed Richard Thornton's career.
She transformed an entire organization, created opportunities for hundreds of people, and built a model that other companies would study for decades. Richard got 6 years in prison.
Lily got a legacy. The math was simple, really. What moment from this story resonated most with you?
Have you ever witnessed workplace discrimination or been underestimated because of who you are? Drop a comment below and share your story.
And if this journey of justice inspired you, subscribe to see more stories of people who refuse to stay silent and transform their pain into power. Because the world needs more people who fight back smart, not just angry.
See you in the next one.